So CDs, albums that are not on streaming services. Andrew Weatherall's Ministry of Sound 3 CD compilation called Masterpiece. This is, I think, what Andrew Weatherall used to call drug chug. Robag Wruhme. This is a DJ mix called Olgamikks. It's very melodic, glitchy, techy. It's actually very easy to listen to, but again, you can't find this on streaming services. Enough of the electronic music, the Soft Boys, Underwater Moonlight. Classic album, many people will know this. This is from 1980, so it's 40 years old this month actually, I think. But this is the original Glassfish Master, not the Yeprock Master or the Ryko Master, which both don't sound as good. So you can't get this master on streaming services either. Lastly, Built to Spill Live. This did appear on Spotify momentarily a couple of months ago because somebody on Twitter notified me about it. But for me, in Germany, it's gone. And this album contains the most amazing 20-minute version of Neil Young's Cortez the Killer, as played by Built to Spill. It is phenomenal. It's way better than the original. You got to hear this, but you won't find it on streaming services. You have to get the CD. So we've seen this before. This is the AURALiC Altair G1 streaming DAC. So it does Roon, Spotify, AirPlay, Bluetooth, and AURALiC's own Lightning DS streaming system. So basically UPnP Open Home based. On the back we have a raft of digital inputs, no outputs, just digital inputs. So the usual suspects there. And then we've got analog outputs on the back as well, balanced. Very useful. And then on the front, a headphone socket, headphone output. Now this almost recalls the Cambridge Audio CXN V2 that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago. Streaming DAC, balanced outputs, but this has the headphone socket, doesn't have Chromecast built in, but it does sound significantly better than the Cambridge. It's more detailed, it makes music sound more spacious internally in the soundstage, and it's more tonally satisfying as well. So this is AURALiC's Lightning DS app. It's still iOS only, but when I use this for streaming with the Altair G1, it sounds just a little bit better than when I'm streaming with Roon. Now, why is that? Well, one reason could be that with Lightning DS, the Altair caches playback, caches the files. There's like a 1 gigabyte cache, if you want me to pronounce it in the alternative way. So with this cache, the AURALiC device can remove jitter, or more effectively remove jitter, so that the DAC benefits down the line. Now Roon doesn't use that cache, so that may be one reason why Lightning DS sounds a little bit better, because only Lightning DS can use that 1 gigabyte cache. And we need to remember this as we move forward with what we're talking about today. So we need to get these CDs into our streaming setup here, and thanks to a recent firmware update, the Altair G1 has learnt a new trick. So to the Altair G1, I have connected an optical disk drive, like the old school optical disk drives. And I've connected the data USB cable to the hard drive input on the back of this unit. But crucially, it's not taking power from the AURALiC device. The CD drive, the optical drive, must be powered independently. So I'm taking mine from a powered USB hub on the side. AURALiC, in their notes for this, actually suggest that if you want the best sound quality possible, spend more on the power supply for the optical drive than you do on the optical drive itself, because this one is pretty damn cheap. So nothing fancy at all. So the reason I've done this is that the AURALiC Altair, even right now, as I'm talking, it's ripping a CD. Now you're probably thinking, or wondering, where is the data going? So I could rip to a network share, but I'm not doing that here. What I've done is I've inserted a hard drive inside the Altair G1 so that the rips get stored on that drive. But if I didn't do that, I could get a portable USB drive, connect it to the same USB hub. So I can rip to a network share, to an external USB drive, or in this case, to an internal hard drive. Right now I am ripping Youth Group's Skeleton Jar. This is an indie rock album from mid-noughties, thereabouts. It's absolutely superb. If you can, try and source the original Australian CD version, because it has an alternative track listing, which I much prefer. This is the US version, which is, it's okay. It's not great. Anyway, I'm ripping it right now. The AURALiC unit is ripping to FLAC to the hard drive inside the Altair G1, FLAC. In the ripping process, to make sure we get an accurate rip, it reads every data sector twice on the CD and then compares them like in a temporary sort of buffer. And then if they match, that gets written to the hard drive. If they don't match, apparently what happens is the ripping system then reads that sector again 8 more times at a slower rate and then commits the best version it can to the hard drive, in terms of data bits. So that's a little bit of technical information about the ripping process. Whilst we were setting this scene up, Olaf and I were talking about ripping to a USB drive because he said it wasn't especially clear what I explained. So I'm going to just briefly mention that now. If you want to rip to an external USB hard drive, like my little Lacey here, the orange thing behind me, you have to connect the data cable for it and the data cable for the CD drive into a powered USB hub. And then the USB hub's USB cable then goes into the back of the AURALiC unit. And the reason I would recommend doing that in some cases, especially if you, like me, you've got a lot of obscure CDs, is that AURALiC used the Music Brains database, third-party database, to pull down metadata, I'm never going to get over this, am I? To pull down the metadata and the cover art. And sometimes it doesn't have the metadata or the cover art. And I would want to add that using my favorite tagging program. And that's much easier if I've got everything stored on a portable external hard drive. So that's a bit of a tech tip if you are, like me, a metadata, I can't say that word, not because I'm in Germany, but if you're very obsessive about metadata, as I am, then you probably want to do it to an external drive so you can edit it afterwards. So my preferred metadata editing program is actually Windows-based. It is called MP3 Tag. It's German. It's been going for about 20 years. It's fantastic. So inside Lightning DS, I have set all CDs inserted to be auto-ripped by this setup. But there's also an option for auto-playback. So when that's enabled, when I insert a disc, it automatically plays that disc and optionally rips it according to my auto-rip settings. So not only is this a CD ripping station, It's effectively a sort of CD player with ripping as an added bonus if you want it. Now, the interesting thing about that is that when it's playing a CD, the AURALiC will use that 1 gig memory cache to store all the sort of temporarily ripped CD information in that buffer before playback, just as Lightning DS would do with a stream. So once again, we get the benefit of that sort of jitter reducing buffered playback. So what that means is when we're playing CDs with the Altair G1, it sounds a little bit better than streaming with Roon. Just a little bit. But how does this CD ripping playback station compare to a more traditional CD player, more expensive as well by quite a bit, like the Hegel Mohican? Now, I would say that a lot of the differences here are attributed to the way that the Hegel's disk, spinning transport and its DAC work together. There's no memory buffer involved here. The Hegel for me is it's not a bright sounding CD player by any stretch, but I'm trying not to say that it's dark because I don't want to call it dark because it's not. But I would say that the AURALiC optical drive and its internal DAC sounds a little bit more lit up in the top end. It doesn't mean it's over etched or anything like that. It just means there's more illumination, a little bit more sort of spice in that top end. But I definitely think that the Hegel is the better sounding CD playback system, and it should be at almost twice the price. If you're wondering how the AURALiC CD playback station compares to other CD players, I have got no earthly idea because the Hegel is all that I have here in terms of CD disc players. Well, I do have a vintage Marantz that's 30 years old, but comparing that with something that's 30 years old, no, it's just not a valid comparison in my book. I think the biggest difference between the AURALiC setup and the Hegel is in the user experience, namely tactility. So with the AURALiC, opening and closing the drawer and inserting a CD feels a bit sort of fiddly, a bit computery. Whereas with the Hegel, it's a sliding mechanism, put the CD in, close the drawer. But then you have to wait and before you can click play, whereas the AURALiC auto plays. So as soon as you put the CD in, you can just go and sit down and it will auto play and auto rip if you want it to. So I guess there are pros and cons for each. I think a lot depends upon whether you're interested in ripping CDs to your hard drive so that you can archive them. Because once I've ripped all of these CDs today, they're going to be permanently, for as long as the hard drive lives, inside this Altair G1, permanently part of my Lightning DS music database. Just for clarification here as to the network setup of these devices, if I'm streaming to the Altair using Roon, I stream from my Nucleus, which is elsewhere, and it comes across the network into the Altair. So the server and the streamer are separate devices. But with Lightning DS, that isn't always the case. Yes, you can stream using Lightning DS across and pull from the network. But in this particular case, because the hard drive is inside the Altair, there is server software running on the Altair as well that's indexing that hard drive. So it's a server streamer that streams to itself. People often ask me, can I run Roon Core on this device? The answer is no, you can't, which is why it's running on a Nucleus elsewhere. That's the advantage of using Lightning DS, is it's a self-contained system. I don't have to tell you how much I'm still into CDs, because the wall of them behind me speaks volumes. I love CDs. I think they're great. I will take any opportunity to make a video about them, including this one. And what I really like probably most about this sort of AURALiC playback and ripping station is that I've got a CD player in effect with an absolutely terrific headphone output. You know, generally most CD players don't come with a headphone output. If they do, it's probably a bit of an afterthought. My vintage Marantz, I think, has one. It sounds pretty weak, but this is fantastic. It sounds very strong. So I can, you know, open CD cases, put the disc in, close the drawer, autoplay, headphones on, and I'm a happy camper. So for me, it's the kind of, yeah, the complete package. It's not perfect in all ways. As I said, it feels a bit sort of IT computery at times, but that's a compromise I'm prepared to put up with because I love CDs so much. If you like CDs as much as I do, please like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified of new videos. I'm pretty sure there'll be another video about CDs before this year is out. And as always, thank you so much for watching. CD player, as well it should do. If you can find it, get the original track listing on streaming services. We need to rip them. And that's what I want to talk about today. No. To get notified of forthcoming, upcoming, newly released. No, this is crap. Why am I talking again? Let's start that again. Nailed it.